actually my first time speaking to you guys and seeing a lot of you guys. Um, like Hazian informed you, I've worked with couples, I've worked with families, I've worked with, sometimes the stories I hear from children just breaks my heart, listening to, their trauma and so. And I also grew up in a home where discipline, was very harsh and so. So when I became a mom, I decided to evolve as a parent. And as a parent, I've evolved throughout the years because I raised two boys, and then 11, 12 years later, I had a girl, and it was two completely different experiences. And I think as parents, it's so very important for us to, retrain ourselves, to evolve, to learn new skills as parents, because our children grow, and they're in completely different generations to us. We definitely can't raise our kids the way our parents raised us. We have to learn new skills. Just like at our jobs, we learn new skills in our jobs. I think it's so important as parents that we learn new skills and we apply them with our kids. This year, you guys, I'm sure you know what, my family went through, with Russell's health and everything. And as a family, we came together. My kids, one live in one part of the country, the other one live out of the country. We all came together as a united front, and that was so good for me. And then I had to be in the role of a mother, a protector, and everything for my kids, with what we went through. So I feel like it's so important for us to look at our role as a parent, and how we see our kids individually. So today I wanted to just read some two passages out of the Adventist home. So this applies to mom. I feel like it could also apply to dads. So would that every mother would realize how great are her duties and her responsibilities, and how great will be the reward of faithfulness. The mother who cheerfully takes up the duties lying directly in her path will feel that life is to her precious because God has given her a work to perform. In this work, she need not necessarily dwarf her mind, nor allow her intellect to become enfeebled. So this other reading relates to there being a united front with parents. Unitedly and prayerfully, the mother and father should bear the grave responsibility of guiding their children aright. Parents are to work as a unit. There must be no division. But many parents work at cross purposes, and thus the children are spoiled by mismanagement. It sometimes happens that as of the mother and father, one is too indulgent and the other too severe. In couple counseling that I do with a lot of my couples, I encourage them to be on the same page with parenting, because I see it so many times, because I work with the whole family system. I work with kids, I work with, parents, I work with couples without kids, and I see a lot of splitting occurring because they're on two different pages. And I feel before even a couple could decide on marriage, one of the main things that they have to decide on is the parenting styles. Because if you don't have the same parenting styles, your kids are definitely going to split you. Let's be real. They're going to go to the parent who says yes. And then the parent who says no you guys then do a bad cop, good cop thing. The parent that becomes no becomes a parent that everyone avoids. So being on the same page as a parent is so very important. But, agreeing on how you're going to discipline your child. Okay? And another thought that I got from this book that I really, really wanted to emphasize: the effect of harsh scolding words. In a home where harsh, fretful, scolding words are spoken, a child cries much. And upon its tender sensibilities, I impress the marks of unhappiness and discord. And it says here, then mothers, but I'd like to put mothers and fathers. Then, mothers and fathers, let your countenance be full of sunshine. Smile if you can, and the infant's mind and heart will reflect the light of your countenance as the polished plate of an artist portrays the human features. Be sure, parents, to have an indwelling Christ so that on your child's plastic mind may be impressed the divine likeness. Yeah, I really like that thought. And I'm not here saying that we shouldn't discipline our kids. I'm just saying the manner in which we discipline our kids. You know, there's a saying that I came across the other day. When children's emotions are high, their language and logic is low. In a meltdown, don't reason with them. Connect, hold space, and be there for them. And I think this occurs for everyone. I mean, we have meltdowns as adults. Let's be real. Let's be honest. Our husband does something, our wives does something, we get upset. We yell, we scream, and so with them. Are they able to rationalize with us at that point? No. So what do? We hold their feelings. They're having emotions. A disagreement means that that person is having emotions that they're unable to control at that point. So do we go high? No, we don't. We give them a safe space. When your spouse is upset, your spouse has a hard day at work, and they come home to you, do you yell and scream at them if they're upset? No, you hold a space for them. You provide a safe space for them. And so it is with our little ones. Sometimes our little ones are dealing with a lot at school, guys. I work with kids that are autistic, that are, have attention deficits, that have so many disabilities. And we have a school system that's rigid. We have a school system with very little flexibility. And what do they want to do? They want to suspend kids, throw them out, kick them out because they're struggling with school. And our kids are dealing with all of that. And they come home and they're very stressed. And then what do? They go high, we go high with them. Instead of providing a safe space for them, instead of holding them. You know, a lot of my clients, I was a massage therapist in the past, and a lot of my clients, I tell them, just massage your kids. Just hold, I encourage clients also, to have like a safe space for their kids. Parents call it timeout table. I'm not comfortable with timeout table or timeout corner. I feel giving it a safer name or a more positive name, and usually putting things there in that corner to calm them down. So instead of like raising our voice, and I'm not saying to you guys don't discipline your kids. I'm saying to you, think about other ways you can do it. Instead of raising your voices at them, I mean, Ellen G. White even talks about it here with the loud voices. I'm just saying, when they come home to us or when they're having a meltdown, something's going on with them. Think about you when you're having a meltdown. Something upsetting you, it's not just out of the blue. Something's going on with you. And having a safe space, having someone just come and hug you, calms you down. Why not do the same thing for your kids? Why not they're acting out, but not acting out, but they're dysregulating at that point? That's the term I like to use because at that point they're unable to regulate their feelings. Why not just provide a safe space for them? A safe space where they could just go from 360 to 180 to 0. Pray for them too. I mean, I encourage my parents. I have parents who tell me their kids are acting up in school and all sorts of things. I encourage my parents to pray for their kids. You don't know what our kids, I think we need to start seeing our kids as kids and not as an adult. We expect our kids to dysregulate and to be able to control and cope with their feelings. Remember, they're not adults. And again, I come back to us as adults. A lot of times we don't even know how to cope with things. So if we have expectations, if we have adult-like expectations for our kids, then we'll see them acting out more and more. Realizing that we need that soft, nurturing love with them, those soft words. Like I said, if your kid is acting out, massage them a little bit. There's trigger points that you can touch your child at that actually calms them down. Go on Google and read it and figure out which one would help your child calm down. Okay? So it's so important to use those calming down techniques with our kids. I wanted to touch on the different parenting styles. The first one I'd like to look at is the authoritarian parent. So the authoritarian parent maintains a high level of control. They adhere to strict set of rules. They're more likely to take part in corporal punishment. Kids of authoritarian parents struggle socially and become authoritarian parents. I would like to add that the kids of authoritarian parents also have high levels of anxiety because of the expectations that are put on them, the rules that are put on them, and then they continue to hold themselves accountable and responsible for those rules. So I see high levels of anxiety of the kids of authoritarian parents. Neglectful parents, this is a big one I see. Uninvolved, disengaged, limited parenting, don't spend much time with kids, right? Most kids who are raised by neglectful parents resist rules and they struggle with self-control. And what that means is there's very little structure with them, very little rules with them. You know, there's very little no. So what happens is they have very little self-control. Okay? Indulgent. So an indulgent parent may be attentive and warm, but have very little rules. And you guys know as adults, very little rules, what happens. No rules in school, no rules at home. What happens is we have kids with no conscience, no value system, okay? And we have kids who basically will eventually end up in the legal system. Authoritative parents. This is the one that to me this hits home more than anything. Pragmatic and flexible parents. They set clear boundaries and encourage children's independence within these limits. Their discipline is more supportive than punitive. And these children are more highly developed. They learn self-control and they learn self-reliance. And also with this authoritative style here, parents are more supportive. And that's something that, I'd like to emphasize a bit more. Being more supportive. And again here, I'm not saying lack of discipline. I'm saying being more supportive than punitive, okay? And again, it goes back to seeing our kids as individuals and what they're going through. You may have one kid with a disability and another kid who does well in school, gets all A's. Having the same set of expectations for two kids is unrealistic. And what ends up happening is you compare the one kid to another. If the kid that's having difficulties or struggling in school doesn't meet your expectations, as a parent, you make it about you. And what happens is you lose the opportunity to actually help this child. So this is where supportive parenting comes in. Treating our kids as all individuals, realizing that they all have individual needs, realizing that we can't use the same book for all of them, looking at their needs individually. Like you guys know, I have 2 boys and 1 girl, and they're from 2 completely different generations. And I had to, like I said to you guys before, I evolved as a parent. When I first got married, I was 20, had my first kid at 26. Back then, I had these set of rules, these set of expectations. I think back then, the Caribbean parenting was still in me. And then I had to evolve as a parent. I had to realize, as a clinician, I became more aware of myself as a parent. I became more aware of my role. And then as a mother, I realized I wanted to be completely different to my parents. I didn't want to be punitive. I wanted to be supportive of my children as they went through each stages of growth. And I think that helped me grow as a mom, realizing, listen, I couldn't be the same person that my parents were. I wanted to just go through the stages of psychosocial growth with you guys. Um, so the first stage of psychosocial development with kids is trust and mistrust. This is from infancy to 18 months. This is where our kids they feel that they can trust their caregivers or they cannot. From, from infancy to 18 months, it's so very important that we provide a nurturing environment for our kids. It's so important that we hug our kids, that we love them, that we feed them. I work with a lot of kids, who first 18 months, where they needed that caregiving, where they needed that love, did not have that. And, because of this lack of attachment to a good caregiver, what happened is as adults, they had difficulties attaching and relationships became a problem. So it's so very important from the first 18 months that we're able to take care of our kids and provide for them. The next stage, the autonomy versus shame and doubts. This is where kids are basically finding themselves. This is where they're growing. Just give me one quick minute. Okay. So here, children are basically performing simple actions for themselves from 18 months to 3 years. This is where potty training becomes a skill that they develop. This is where also they're making food choices on their own. From 18 to 3 years, they're telling you what they like, what they don't like. This is where they're learning some level of independence. And what happens is they gain control. So if potty training is faulty, if you as a parent between 18 months to 3 years yells at your child because they're not eating the foods that you would like them to eat, or they're not potty training, or they're not potty training the way you want them to potty train, there's failure and shame as a result of this. If your kid is able to learn potty training and you validate their feelings and you make them feel like, okay, they've really done something great, they grow up with autonomy and control. So it's so very important that it's so important that that phase of parenting be done in a healthy, positive manner for kids. Okay? And bear with me 1 minute. And the next stage is 3 to 5 years old. This is initiative versus guilt. And at this stage in our lives, our kids are testing this is a preschool age. They begin to assert their control through interacting and through direct play and social interactions and so. So for the age of preschool, from 3 to 5 years old, if our children are too powerful, if they're too strong, if they're aggressive or so, then there's that disapproval that they get from us. And then if they're able to socialize and they learn the appropriate social skills, then they get positive reinforcement. Okay? Industry versus inferiority. This is age 5 to 11. Through social interactions, they develop a sense of pride in their accomplishments and abilities. Here, our kids are learning to cope with academic demands and with social demands. And if there's a failure, there's that inferiority that comes again. And if there's success, they feel competent and they feel competent and confidence in themselves. Okay? And this phase, basically from 5 to 11, a lot of their personality develops during that phase. A lot of their personality develops, and their confidence, if they're not interacting, if they're not developing the appropriate social skills, if they're not developing the support systems, you see a lot of lack of self-confidence, you see a lot of doubt, and this hinders them to go on to the other stages of growth. I see a lot of that with my middle schoolers. I work with a lot of middle schoolers and a lot of preteens. I don't know if you guys are aware, there's a lot of bullying going on in schools. I work with there's a lot of mental health issues going on right now with our preteens and with our teens, and so a lot of depression, and so. I mean, today I saw like about 3 girls with depression, and so, and a lot of it I see stemming from home environments. I see trauma in the home environments. I see a lot of it stems also from, bullying. And what happens is the self-confidence is affected. There's depression, there's anxiety. A lot of kids are not wanting to go to school because of, the bullying that goes on in school. A lot of kids who have, again, it goes back to the home environment. I was talking to you guys about kids who have been traumatized in the home. If the home environment is not safe, if we are not giving them a safe space again, you're going to see depression. Mental health is a big thing among our teenagers. During COVID, I had like so many young people coming for counseling, and so because depression and anxiety became a big thing in their lives. Let's be real. They were going to school 1 minute, and then the next thing, home became school. And, they were cut off from their friends. They were cut off, they had to do remote schooling. A lot of kids had difficulties with remote schooling because of anxiety. And a lot of kids, I've realized, a lot of preteens, a lot of teens have not adjusted back to school because of that cutoff period. And I'm still seeing a lot of teens and a lot of, preteens with depression, and so. It's sad because I have even 7 years and 8-year-old kids saying to me that, they're having thoughts of wanting to die, and so on. And that's why I think it's so very important for us to look at our roles in the home. What are we doing to support our kids through whatever they're going through at school? Even our teens, there's high rates of depression. How are we communicating with our teens? What are our expectations? Are we, in our parenting, contributing to the depression and anxiety with our kids? School in itself, I'm going to go back to school in itself, bullying and so. I mean, shootings in school is causing anxiety among our kids. What are we as parents doing to provide support to our kids through these crises that they're experiencing? Are we focused on academics? Are we focused on our expectations and how they're not meeting our expectations? Or are we focusing on their mental health? What do you do when your kid comes home? A lot of teens run to the bedrooms, they're on their phones. What are you doing to connect with your child as a parent? Are you asking them? Are you sitting and lecturing to them as to what your expectations for them are? Are you asking them the questions that you need to ask them? Or are you focused on your role or how you're feeling them as a parent? And, communication between parents is a very big thing during the adolescent period. During age 12 to 18, our kids go through identity versus confusion. These are the turbulent teenage years. Our teens are trying to develop a sense of self during these years. They're trying to, develop their own personal identity. And in doing that, you're going to find that they're going to pull away from you as a parent. They're going to be letting go of some of your value system and developing their own value system. And I'm not talking about drugs or anything. I'm just talking about they're going to develop their own value system. They're going to start seeing things differently to the way you see it. How are you approaching that as a parent? Are you an enforcer or are you a supporter? Because as our teens go through these struggles, they need support. They don't need lectures. And I'm not saying to you, don't speak to your child. I'm not saying to you, don't speak to your child about right or wrong. I'm just saying, are you taking the time to listen to your teen? Are you allowing yourself to be flexible in your thinking? Or are you holding on to the same rigid expectations or the same rigid, because I hear a lot of parents say that, you know, I have to raise my child the way my parent raised me, realizing that, you know, we're dealing with a different generation. Again, I go back to your generation is completely different to your child's generation. I mean, we have social media, we have Instagram, we have all these things out there now that are influencing our kids. You know, are you looking at them as an individual, or are you expecting them to think the way you think? That, you know, that year, those years there, 11 to 18, there's a lot of conflicts between parents and children. What's causing the conflict? How do we resolve the conflict with them? Are we purposeful? Are we intentional about our needs for them and about what we want to do and help them with? Or is it what is our value system that we're superimposing on them? That's very important. You know, communication, as we're on the topic of communication, I wanted to discuss some of the communication styles. Yeah. Some of the communication styles that I've seen work with a lot of parents is using praise instead of negative statements. You know, encouraging your child, looking for the positive in your child. I know sometimes it's hard as a parent to see the positive when they're acting out again, when they're making bad choices again. Engaging in play. Play is such a great way of connecting with your child. You know, I'm a play therapist also, so I do a lot of trauma work with kids. And we do it through play. And it's amazing how kids communicate through play. It's amazing how you can get them to open up. It's amazing how you can engage them, how you can, bond with them through play. Sometimes taking that time, guys, for your children. Sometimes we get so caught up in work, sometimes we get so caught up in our roles as parents that we forget that bonding that we need with our kids. So sitting and playing with your kids, my niece is also a play therapist, and we were talking about this the other day, how sometimes, she sits and plays with her 7-year-old daughter when she's going through a crisis to get her through. Because play is our little one's world. Their world doesn't talk. They're not going to sit and talk with us about their emotions, but through play, they're going to open up to us. Even with your teenage son, your teenage daughters, there's different ways. You're not going to sit and play with a tea set, although some of them may still want to play with a tea set, but there are different ways you can play with them. You can get down into their level as a parent. You don't have to sit and just lecture to them all the time. You can get down to their level. You can talk with them. You can, find. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, do something that they like. What are some, do you, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you guys there are ways to engage your child. What did you do with them before? Mm-hmm.
Probably go to like the zoo, the park, or something, to the movies.
Yeah.
But now it's like I'm Uber. I
Mm-hmm.
just have to take him and his friends around and just, that's it, stay away.
Yeah. Have you asked them? what they would like to do with you? Have you done that?
Um, yeah, I've tried it, but it's still like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to like stoop to his level. It's just about him and his friends.
Yeah, and that's the reality. When they become teenagers, a lot of times it's about them and their friends. But I mean, what is something that do you guys have like family activities you do, like board game? I know what. I mean, my sons are. I have a 34 and so on, and they're like, I have a 34-year-old son who always wants to play board games and so. So I mean, and we find, not age appropriate board games. Is that something?
We play Scrabble, but it's like after the first round, he wants to disappear.
Okay. So have you guys thought about like probably one night a week or one night a month where you guys can do fun activities and stuff?
I've tried it, but my schedule is like I get off work late, and by the time I pick them up, it's like 9 o'clock at night, so it's time for bed. So it's like it's hard even to get him to church. It's like always a hassle to get him out the house. So sometimes I will just like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this today. I'll just leave him alone and just, yeah.
Do you think that that's a habit you've gotten into though?
Yeah.
Of leaving him alone?
I
So
blame
now it's
myself.
yeah.
Yeah, I blame myself. So I think because
Well,
I gave him that
this is not
choice.
about blaming. This is just looking at habits
Yeah,
that we've
yeah.
created. Yeah. So, but it's not too late to. I mean, I think a lot of times it's doing what your kids are into at that period, especially as a teenager. Finding out from them what they would like to do, because a lot of times what you want to do and what they want to do is different. So sometimes there's a bit of compromising. What about like sitting and having that conversation with him about something that he would like to do that you can join him in?
I could try tonight and see.
And you could listen, you're not going to start off with a 4-hour activity or a 5-hour activity. I think even if you can get your child to sit you know, don't personalize their wanting to be with their friends more than you. I mean, they're at the stage in their life, where they're ready to they're going to pull away from you. That doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. That doesn't mean you're a bad parent. That doesn't mean that they're a bad child because they're doing that. It's natural progress. I think it's just about having realistic expectations. Instead of expecting them to spend 4 hours with you, a half an hour isn't bad to start off with, or even 15 minutes. At least it's some time that they're spending. I mean, you don't want to pressure them also to do something that they don't want to do, and then it becomes something that is something hard for you to do or for him to do. Just start off with 15 minutes. Even if you guys go sit somewhere, or you go watch him play basketball for 15 minutes or do something, but even if it's 15 minutes of an activity, and then, you guys can increase that as it goes along, but start probably changing patterns, changing instead of going along with him, avoiding it, probably getting him to join you in some activity.
Okay, thank you.
You had asked a question? The gentleman here.
No, I was just preparing for the future.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Did anyone else have any questions or so? Uh-huh.
My question is about the age group of around 5. If you see a child that's around 5, 6, that's not that interested in being too social, is that something, how can you get ahead of that so that they're not too introverted or too, just not wanting to mix with the crowd? How do I look at that?
Before I answer that, I just wanted to say, remember, kids, we gotta be realistic too about our expectations for kids. Kids grow at their own pace. They do things at their own pace. So because at 5 years old he's not progressing socially as you think he should, don't necessarily, immediately, say that he's going to be an introvert or anything. What I would do is I would create opportunities, like sometimes something in the community that he can do, probably, karate or so, some sort of team activity or so that he could get involved in, he or she could get involved in to help them to develop those social skills. Yeah. Some kids, I remember someone was telling me recently, the teachers was harassing them because, their child wasn't socializing and they wanted to label the child as autistic and so on. They wanted to, do a whole lot of, tests and so on the child. And the following week or two, the child started interacting with other kids. And that's what I'm saying to you. Sometimes we rush our kids to meeting meeting society's expectations and meeting those developmental charts. And sometimes it's also allowing them to go at their own pace, but also providing the opportunities. Like play groups, things like that that they could join and they could become a part of. Yeah. And even, starting off with probably, like someone, that they're familiar with or they have some little connection with, probably increasing those connections with that person. Yeah. But just creating and finding opportunities. Yeah. COVID kids struggle with social skills right now because kids who were born during COVID and, even when they were a few months or they were 1 year, they struggle socially now because during COVID, they were inside, there was no social opportunity. I have a client of mine, this was one of her things. Her son was born during COVID, and she was one of these really strict parents where 3 years after COVID, she still, wasn't having the child socializing and so. And, again, when kids have social, inadequacies, in our society, we're ready to label them as autistic and so. And, we talked about providing more opportunities and, breaking out of her fears of COVID to helping the kid to, enter this world of socializing because the kid hadn't been socializing at all with other kids. So there was a lack of social skills as a result of that, adults was his world. And so it's so very important that, you provide opportunities for little ones, positive opportunities for their social skills to develop, okay? Even you interacting with them too and modeling socializing. Model it to them, you play with them, you model play with them so that they could actually have that experience and they can, share, they can also meet with other kids and play with them. You're opening up to them to the world of play when you do that.
So what if you're providing that environment to foster socialization? At what point should you be concerned as a parent?
So in the school, how is the 5-year-old?
I would say it's more alongside play. 6-year-old, alongside play, but not really bonding it with anyone in particular. It's not that there's no socialization, but you don't see bonding happening.
Yeah. So is that even with like other kids outside of the school also? Like if you were to create like probably have some friends over and has that happened,
There's interaction, but not bonding with
Not bonding.
other, yes.
And the child is at school already?
Yes, so the child is in a school environment.
All day long?
Yes, but they're not connecting to their
With
peers.
other,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're saying that they play along with the kids, but they're not connecting.
Right.
So you mean that they're not developing friendships with them?
Right.
Okay. And this is a child's first year at school?
No.
Second, okay. So does the child connect with a sibling?
Yes.
Okay. Does the child connect with a cousin also?
Yes.
Okay. So the child is able to develop friendships. The child just isn't doing it at school? Okay, yeah. So is the child highly anxious at school also?
Just distracted.
Distracted? Okay. So distracted with school or distracted when he's playing?
The child enjoys playing by himself.
Okay, yeah. See, be- in a situation like this, I know it would look, as though clinicians would look at that as something to do with autism, so I'm very careful with that. So that's why I'm very skeptical about labeling kids very quickly, especially at 5 years old, because I feel like we have to also allow kids to grow at their own pace and develop at their own pace. And sometimes, putting these expectations, because I'm hearing that the child is able to engage with a sibling, and they're able to engage and bond with a cousin also. So there's not a problem with bonding. There's not a problem with engaging with someone. It's just in the school environment, the child is struggling with that. So that's what I'm wondering, looking at the school environment. If it was a problem that was across the board, then I would have more concerns about it. But it's something in the school environment. And I can't give you, a diagnosis or something, or I can't say something unless I know the full picture of that child. It's really important for me to look at the full picture. I mean, the child is able to bond. That's what I'm hearing. It's just something is going on in school. And sometimes when the school environment, when there are high levels of anxiety there, that holds kids back from engaging and bonding and so too. Yeah. So it could. Anyone else has any questions? I hope our discussion today was helpful to all of you guys. Parenting is definitely a challenging role. There are a lot of challenges as parents, as caregivers, there are a lot of challenges and so on. And parents, give yourself a pat on the shoulder. You do a great job. It's always, what would help, like I said earlier, what would help you guys is to, educate yourself more and more about parenting skills, because kids are having a lot more, limitations. They're having a lot more challenges in schools. Schools are very difficult right now for kids. So educating yourself, there's a lot more anxiety. I see highly anxious children. I see a lot of, and my heart goes out to them. I see I have kids, that come in with, so much depression and so much disabilities and so much challenges in school. So I do encourage you guys, as parents of little ones, as parents of teenagers and so, to educate yourself and, see where you can develop your skills, where as parents and so. Become aware of the needs. Yeah. I don't have any cards right now, but you can reach out to Ella Russell. I don't want to give my telephone number public, but you can reach out to him. Yeah. Okay? Yeah. But, I'm willing, if you have any difficulties or struggle, I'm willing to, help with whatever you may need help with. Okay? All right. Okay, then, guys, thank you very much for having me. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I definitely think pregnancy, I remember when I was pregnant with my first son, I remember I used to play music a lot and I used to read to him a lot. Definitely connecting with our kids. Like I told you guys, it was difficult for me to get pregnant. So when I got pregnant, it was like the biggest thing for me, And I interacted with my child, and I remember one day I went to church, I went to a church event, and the music was loud, and I actually felt my son kicking me like he was dancing in my woman. So, I think exposing our things, I think reading, I read a lot to my child. My diet was really important for me, he still ended up being premature, but I did the best I could as a mother, to make sure, he was healthy and that I was also bonding with him. And I don't know, studies out there show a connection with reading and so and music and so, it shows a connection. I mean, Sylvan's very, very, very intelligent, Sometimes, his intelligence amazes me. That's my first son. The other day we went to an escape room, and it was so difficult. All of us were there. We couldn't figure out how to handle the problem we had to solve in the escape room, and Sylvan was able to do it. So, I mean, I don't know if my reading to him all the time helped with the intelligence, but being a nurturer, being nurturing to our kids is so very important. Sometimes we get so caught up in the rules, and so, oh, they should be this and should be that, and we lose the opportunity to bond with our kids. We worry about their being good teenagers, being good in school, and we forget that relationship, building on that relationship with them. And, working with kids who have been in the foster care from age 3 and from age 1 and all of that, and who didn't have parenting. You guys having kids is a privilege, and keeping them is your responsibility, and nurturing them and loving them. And even through the hard times and the good times, and so being the nurturer that you need to be for your kids is really important. Okay? All right. Anything else? Okay, thank you.